number that's in the C position and see if it's a perfect square of whatever half of this is, right? And it's not. So the first thing we're going to do is subtract that 13 from both sides, which will leave us with x squared plus 6x. Leave a space for our perfect number equals negative 13. Okay? So we need to find our coefficients for a and b to get our perfect number. So in front of that x squared is a coefficient of 1. In front of the x is a coefficient of 6. Okay, so we want to take 6 divided by 2 times 1 and then square it. 2 times 1 is 2, 6 divided by 2 is positive 3, so 3 squared is 9. Okay, so the magic number that gets added here is 9, and 9 over here as well, which it was in example 4 as well, but it was, this was negative 3, right? So when we go to factor this, this is actually x plus 3 quantity squared. So just make sure you watch that sign, okay? And then on the right side of the equal sign, we have negative 13 plus 9, which is negative 4. Inverse operations say to take the square root. These are inverse operations, so we're left with x plus 3 on the left. And then on the right, we have the square root of negative 4. What's that? 2i. Add the plus or minus, right? And then just subtract 3 from both sides. So you get x equals negative 3 plus or minus 2i. Final answer. Okay. Any questions on example 5? Okay. One more that has a fraction. So we've got 2y squared plus 2y plus 5 equals 0. So we want to look at that C term and see if it's a perfect square. It's not. What else do you notice about number 6? Has a leading coefficient of 2. Okay, so whenever you have a leading coefficient, the first thing you want to do is divide by whatever that coefficient is. Okay, so if we divide everything by 2, we're going to have y squared plus y plus 5 halves, but I want to move that to the other side, so it's going to be equal to negative 5 halves. And that's where our perfect number is going to go. Okay. All right, so we need that perfect number right here. So we need to get our coefficients for a and b. So we look at this equation, not the first one, right? Because now we've got a 1, coefficient of 1, and another coefficient of 1. So when we do b, it's just 1 over 2 times 1. And square it. So 1/2 squared is 1/4. It looks like it's going to be a messy fraction, but watch what happens. So we say plus 1/4 here, plus 1/4 here. Okay? So we want to factor that. So we just look over here. What number did we just square? The 1/2. So we say y plus 1/2. Okay. And then on the right side of the equal sign, we want to add these two fractions, but in order to add two fractions, you have to have what? Common denominator. So if I multiply this by 2 over 2, I'm going to have negative 5 halves, negative 10 over 4 plus 1/4, which is negative 9 over 4. It adds one extra step here, okay? So we're going to take the square root of both sides. These are inverse operations, so they cancel each other out. And we have y plus 1/2 equals, and then the fraction looks messy on the right side, but when you look at it closely, 9 is a perfect square and 4 is a perfect square, right? What's the square root of 9? 3. And what's the square root of 4? 2. And there's a negative under there, so we need to say I. So plus or minus 3/2 I. Everybody with me on that? Okay. Subtract 1/2. So the final answer is y equals negative 1/2 plus or minus 3/2 I. Okay. A lot of examples, but these are a little more complicated and they kind of progress from easy to hard. Okay. So you're going to see different levels as you work on that assignment.